Good morning, everybody. We're live from the Birdhouse, and today is Saturday, February 26th, and we're just getting over another snowy day here in upstate New York. But today is gorgeous. The sun is shining, the birds are singing. So if you go outside today, you'll probably hear some birds chirping away. I'm curious if any of you guys are hearing the birds calling. This morning I was hearing the tufted titmouse was calling, Carolina wren. There were some cardinals out there, some blue jays squawking. So it was a whole mix of some different birds. So I'd love to know what kind of things you're hearing and seeing. So definitely put those in the comments or just say hi. We'd love to know who's on. And of course, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put those in the comments. And so if you're interested in what kind of birds you're hearing, there's different ways you can go about identifying them. First of all, you can get something like this. It's a little bird call identifier is what it's called, and this helps you to learn them. It comes with little different song cards, and if you press the button next to it, this is the Carolina wren, it'll play you some of their songs. So that's one way. But there's also another way you can go about identifying what kind of birds you're hearing, which is really cool. If you have a smartphone, which most of us do at this point, you can pull up an app called Merlin, and it's completely free. And there's different things. It's kind of hard to see in this picture here. There's different options that you can click on. And if you click on Sound ID, a little microphone will pop up, and it'll listen to what birds it hears calling. And as it is identifying them, it will make a list. So I just ran outside a few minutes ago to do it. I was hoping to get more than one bird, but there was a lot of blue jays out there squawking. So it'll listen, and you'll see there's a little thing where it flips all the little lines every time it hears a bird call. And then as it hears more and more birds, it'll make a list. So it doesn't just identify one bird, it'll make a whole list of everything that you're hearing. And so say you get a blue jay and say you get, a cardinal on there too. If the blue jay calls again, it'll highlight the blue jay. So that's a really good way to start learning your calls also. So really, really cool. I love this tool. It's on an app called Merlin. So if you don't have it, it's really, really good. And it'll help you identify birds with pictures too. So if you have a picture, you can always upload it to Merlin. And it's not always right, but it'll help you at least get close to what kind of bird it is that you have a picture of. So really, really cool stuff out there. And as the birds start to sing, keep in mind it's not nesting season yet, but it can't hurt to prepare your birds for nesting season. If you have birdhouses out and you haven't cleaned the nesting material out of them from last year, now is a really good time to do that. So you can clear out that nesting material. If you do need some kind of cleaner, white vinegar always works. There are birdhouse cleaners that are just natural enzymes. You can spray it inside the house, and that'll help kind of break up anything that might be in there. So now's a really good time to go out and clean out those nests from last year if you still have them in your house. The birds will reuse a nest box even if there is a nest in there, but if there is a nest in there from last year, it can be moldy. It could have some kind of nest parasites in it. So it is best to clean those out if you can. A couple things going on at the Birdhouse, as always. Our caption contest is still going, and you still have today to enter. On our Facebook page, pinned up at the top of the page, you'll see our caption contest with this picture of the snowy owl. And you can put in a caption that you have for this photo. So that will go through the end of the day today. And then after you have your caption, make sure to go back and like which ones are your favorites. And the photos with the most likes and reactions will get a $25 gift certificate to the Birdhouse. So that is still going on. And you have all day today to come up with a great caption, but make sure to go back and see what everybody else put on there and make sure to like your favorites. So our caption contest is still going strong. And this is a great photo of a snowy owl here to caption. The photo was sent in to our photo contest by Chris Marshall. And if you like snowy owls, next Saturday, which is March 5th, will be in March already, we have Teddy the snowy owl coming back to the birdhouse, and he'll be here from 11 to 1. And we'll announce that again on Tuesday, but we will have Teddy the snowy owl back on Saturday, a week from today. So we've got that going on as well. But as far as what's going on in your backyard, we've gotten some really cool reports of some different birds, and we'll talk about how you can best attract them to your yard. We're in that kind of weird transitional time where it's still snowy, but the birds are starting to get into their breeding behaviors. They're starting to pair up a little bit. I have a pair of cardinals that's been coming to my feeders consistently every day, so they're starting some of that mating behavior. If you had big mixed flocks of birds for a while, they're going to probably start to break up and start to pair off, but you'll probably still see flocks of blackbirds as they're migrating into the area. So some things to keep an eye out for. I love this picture that was sent in by Bob. He says spotted white-crowned sparrow feeding in the backyard today. So a lot of us get sparrows, like the house sparrows, but there's also different sparrows that backyards and at your feeders, so be on the lookout for them. This is called a white-crowned sparrow, and this is going to be bigger than your typical house sparrow. They're going to be overall more of a gray color too. So if you think of house sparrows, they're quite brown. The white-crowned sparrows are quite gray. So they're large, they're gray, and then of course they've got that really bright black and white striping on the top of their head that gives them that crown. If you see something that looks kind of like this but a little bit off and it has a white patch on its throat, that's going to be a white-throated sparrow. Those are around here right now too. And the white-throated sparrow will have a little bit of yellow by its eye. So that's a way to identify the two different ones. But you can see that this white-crowned sparrow does not have any yellow by its eye. So this is a cool sighting to have in your backyard. Not your most common bird right now, but they're going to be not necessarily at feeders, but underneath the feeder is where you're most likely to see them. But there's different feeders that large birds like the white-crowned sparrow would like. If you're trying to attract them, I would get a tray, some kind of a hanging tray feeder like this. These are super popular in the spring too, when we start getting rose-breasted grosbeaks in. They're larger birds, so they need something with more perching room. So these tray feeders, you can put seed in them. In the spring, you can put oranges in them. Sometimes people do to attract the orioles. So you can put a little bit of anything in them, which is really, really nice. And the most important thing when attracting birds is the seed makes all the difference. So if you have a seed mix that has a lot of yellow stuff in it, like the cracked corn and the millet, the birds will eat that, but they tend to go to other things first. So they like that black oil sunflower seed, they like the peanuts, they like the safflower. So a blend that looks more like this and doesn't have a lot of that yellow stuff in it is the best way to go. This is our Chickadee Blend, which is our best seller, and for good reason. There's something in there for any kind of bird that's going to come to a feeder. So even though it's called chickadee, it's a little deceiving because not only will you get chickadees, but you'll get cardinals and you'll get finches. And so there's really something in there for everybody. So the seed definitely makes the difference. If you're not getting a lot of bird activity at your feeders, it could be the seed. If it's been out there for a while, check to make sure there hasn't gotten moisture in it. If it's wet, it can get moldy and the birds don't want to come to it, especially the Niger seed. Niger seed can go bad after a couple of months, 2-3 months. So if you're not getting finches at your Niger feeder anymore, it could be that the Niger is just old. And of course, you can always have a hawk. That's a common occurrence, which we've brought up many times here. You could have a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk at your feeder, and that will scare the birds away like nothing else. So keep that in mind. People are also getting bluebirds. This picture was sent in by Bob. He says, so much bluebird activity at my house. It is really crazy, even for me. If you watch this broadcast, you know Bob has awesome birds in his backyard, like this white-crowned sparrow. So he's been getting a lot of bluebird activity. He says many of them have been huddling with each other and grouping with other birds in the brush. They have been eating suet, the bugs, nuts, and fruit block, mealworms, and even pieces of the chickadee seed mix. I have hundreds and hundreds of photos, but here are a few. The one with the male on the birdhouse was taken through a screen window, so not as sharp. So one thing to keep in mind too with your nesting boxes is bluebirds are some of our earliest nesting songbirds we have in the area. So if you do get bluebirds and if you get them coming to your houses, they're going to be probably the first bird you'll see nesting. House sparrows, of course, start nesting early too, but bluebirds are a really early nesting species, so you might start to see some of that activity of them coming and going, checking out cavities for nest sites. Once you see them starting to carry nesting material, so once you start to see them with some of that in their beak, that's when you really know you've got some nesting, true nesting behavior going on. Here's the male and female right here, really great photo. Here they are grouping up. This is a great photo. It shows them all fluffed up, trying to keep warm, huddled together. So lots of bluebird activity. If you are lucky enough to get bluebirds in the spring and in the summer, of course, they love those nest boxes. They aren't cavity nesters, so they need a place to lay their eggs and raise their young, and nest boxes are perfect for bluebirds to attract them. But if you don't get them nesting and you want to try to attract them, you can put out a bluebird feeder, and they don't have to be anything super elaborate, just a little dish type of thing. You might have something like this for Orioles that you put jelly in, same kind of thing. If you've got one of these that's orange, that's totally fine. The bluebirds don't mind that at all. And you can fill these with the bluebirds. And the bluebirds, because they're insect eaters generally, even though right now they have more of a varied diet because there's really not that many insects out. But you can give them these mealworms. So right now we have freeze-dried mealworms. In probably 2 to 3 weeks, once it warms up a little bit more regularly, we will have the live mealworms, and that's what they really, really like. So I get it, mealworms aren't for everybody. Not everybody likes to feed mealworms, but the bluebirds absolutely love it. If you don't want to deal with the mealworm thing, there's other things you can put out in those little bluebird feeders, like these Bluebird Nuggets, they're called. And these are just little suet pieces. So these are little suet nuggets, and there's little insect material in there, but you don't have to look at it. So these are called Bluebird Nuggets, and the bluebirds love those too. And Bob mentioned in his photo submission too that they're also eating the bugs, nuts, and fruit suet blocks, and those are blocks of mixed seeds that have mealworms in them, but it's they're all mixed in there. So that's been a really popular feed for the birds this season. Just like our Chickadee Blend, there's something in the bugs, nuts, and fruit mix for any kind of bird that's going to come to a feeder. And then here's another photo sent in by Bob of the bluebirds all huddled together, and then there's a house finch mixed in there too. He says, huddling together for a little morning warmth. Can't blame them. It's been quite snowy. Hopefully we're done with that for now for a while. So bluebirds showed you some of those feeders that they might come to. They've been coming to people's heated bird baths, which we'll see photos of. But they do really like that insect material. But if you've got any kind of berry producing shrubs or plants, they might be coming to those too, because they do eat berries just like the robins do. So you might be seeing them right now eating some different berries. So keep an eye out for that, for flocks of birds at berry producing trees and shrubs. Bluebirds, of course, the robins, cedar waxwings, and then also mockingbirds. So we've been getting some questions about mockingbirds because people have been seeing them around and wondering if they stay all winter. So a mockingbird isn't going to be a common bird here in the winter, but some people have been reporting them all winter long. And now that birds are starting to sing, if you hear a bird that's just singing and singing and singing, but it's changing its song. I know some birds like Carolina wrens are really verbose and they just sing and sing and sing, but they tend to sing the same song over and over. Mockingbirds will sing a song repeated usually 3 times and then move on to another song, repeat that 3 times, move on to another. So if you hear something like that where a song's being repeated, in repetitions of 3. It's probably a mockingbird, and really it's the only mimicking species we have in the area right now. Soon we'll start to see gray catbirds. When I say soon, I guess it's not that soon, but as we start to get into spring migration, you'll start to hear some gray catbirds. Those are another mimicking species we have here, and then also brown thrasher. So those are 3 mimics that we have, but right now the one you're going to hear in Rochester, or if you're in upstate New York at all, is going to be this mockingbird. So you never know, you might just hear those now that the birds are starting to call more. Here's some more bluebird activity at heated bird baths. We're kind of on that cusp where we still need heated bird baths, but hopefully a couple weeks from now, when things start to warm up, you can put out your regular bird baths. So those heated bird baths, we're still going to need them for a little bit. Here's a photo sent in by Steve when we were talking about birds enjoying their heated bird baths. He says, mine take baths even when it's below 0. So here it looks like there's some house sparrows using the heated bird bath. It's amazing that they'll use it all winter long, even when it's freezing cold. But they do need the water to survive, and they need that water to clean their feathers. So they will do that all winter long. Some other birds, you guys have spotted house finches, and house finches are really beautiful. The males have the red coloration on them. Common birds to see at your backyard feeder. They love black oil sunflower. They really love safflower, it seems. That seems to be the thing they like the most in my yard, just like cardinals love the safflower seed. The house finches are no exception. And you might get house finches at your mixed seed feeder. A tube feeder like this is perfect for them. They can fit on something even with small perches. Or they love those tray feeders. Just about every kind of bird on the tray feeders. So any kind of typical bird feeder that offers some kind of sunflower seed or sunflower seed mix or safflower is great for birds like house finches. And this is a sunflower seed feeder. You can tell because the hole in it is nice and big. If it has really little holes, that's for your Niger seed. So that's how you can tell the difference. And one thing I should bring up too is if you've been having issues with getting moisture in your tube feeders, you can add a weather guard. So there's different types. There's some that will just fit perfectly on top of your feeder, which is really snazzy. But you can also get some that you just hang, that have little hooks on them, and you can hang your feeders from them. So we have plenty of those. We just got a whole bunch of them in. A lot of you guys have weather guards for your Oriole feeders. It might be orange, an orange dome. Even if you have one of those, it doesn't have to be just for Oriole feeders. You can put it over your tube feeders if they're starting to get moisture inside of them. So some more fun sightings you guys have had. This was sent in by Mark, who says red-bellied woodpecker and sparrow feeder activity. So we've been talking woodpeckers quite a bit, and this is a neat photo because it shows the woodpeckers' specialized feet. You can see here some of the woodpeckers' toes, and they have special toes that 2 point up, 2 point back. You can only see one here. It almost looks like it might be missing something, or I think it's just the angle here. We can only see a couple of the woodpeckers' toes, but normally birds have 3 toes pointing up front and then 1 in the back, but woodpeckers have those specialized toes that are 2 and 2, which allow them to cling on feeders like this paddle tail feeder, which it looks like, unfortunately, the house sparrow is also getting good at clinging onto, although he's kind of struggling there. So if you're looking to attract woodpeckers, especially larger woodpeckers like this red-bellied woodpecker or the pileated woodpecker, a paddle tail feeder is great. And that's one of these suet feeders here that has this projection on it. And just like in the picture that Mark sent in here, you can see the red-bellied woodpecker is using its tail. It's propping its tail up against that tail prop in order to help it be more stabilized when feeding. So lots of woodpecker activity right out there now. And we've been talking a lot about the differences between male and female woodpeckers, and you absolutely can tell the difference here really well in this picture. This is a female red-bellied woodpecker, and you can tell it's a female because if you look at the top of her head, she's got that gray patch there. So if it was a male, that red would go all the way to her bill without stopping. So this is the female red-bellied woodpecker, and of course, the house sparrow. So not anything as exciting as that white-crowned sparrow, but this is a common sight, especially in my backyard. Lots of sparrows, lots of starlings, which happens. I should mention, though, if you are getting lots of sparrows coming to your suet feeder, lots of starlings, we do have what's called an upside down suet feeder. So we were out of them for a little bit. They've been really popular because so many starlings are around, but this is what they look like. I don't think I've shown it recently. They feed from the bottom. So it hangs, and the woodpeckers and nuthatches and chickadees, they can cling onto the bottom of it. But sparrows tend to have a difficult time doing that. So every once in a while we hear of a sparrow that figures it out, but in general, it's difficult for them, and it will kind of lower your sparrow activity at the feeders. There's also a Niger feeder that's designed for that same thing. The feeding ports are upside down from the perches, so goldfinches can tip upside down to feed, and sparrows can't. So there's some ways you can kind of discourage sparrows if you're trying to. Here's some more woodpecker photos sent in by Mark. This is a pileated woodpecker from Mendon Ponds this past week. This is a cool photo because you can see the woodpecker's tongue. We were talking about kind of the biology of the woodpecker, and they have a really long tongue, and you can see it here in the picture. So it's really cool. So here's the pileated woodpecker, female. Just like we could tell the red-bellied woodpecker was a female, you can tell that this pileated woodpecker is a female because she's got black on her mustache, I guess you would call it, instead of red. If it was a male, they would have that red mustache. So large woodpeckers like this pileated woodpecker, absolutely you'd want something like a paddle-tail suet feeder for them to cling on to a little bit easier. And here you can see the toes. He points that out, that you can see the toes well here, where you can see two are pointed up and two are pointed back. So really cool sighting of a pileated woodpecker there at Mendon. And then there's some more woodpeckers here. Here is the red-bellied woodpecker, again female because she's got that gray patch on her head, and a downy woodpecker. And it's hard to tell from this photo if it's male or female. It looks like it might be female. If it's male, it'll have a red spot on the back of its head. So hard to tell in this photo here, but lots of woodpecker activity. People are reporting Redwing Blackbirds, which is kind of exciting. They're one of the first birds we see coming back into the area for spring. So some people get them all winter long, but just like the Mockingbirds, it's not a super common bird here in the wintertime. So Redwing Blackbirds, be on the lookout for them, usually underneath your feeders. Grackles, we've had some reports of grackles coming back. Again, not everybody's favorite bird, but a sure sign that spring is on its way. If you have a lot of blackbird activity and you want to kind of discourage them, putting out safflower seed is a seed that the grackles don't like. So cardinals love it. Those house finches we saw photos of, they love it, but the grackles really don't like it. So that's one thing you can do to kind of discourage them. And then the brown-headed cowbird, people have been reporting some brown-headed cowbirds too. So look for these blackbirds in flocks. Sometimes they'll form mixed flocks where you'll see redwing blackbirds and cowbirds and grackles all together. So blackbirds are coming back into the area. And of course, European starlings are here. Here's this photo that was sent in by Lynn of a mystery blackbird. And this is a European starling, which we have all year long. They'll be here. So they're another bird, though, that doesn't like that safflower seed so much. So one way to kind of discourage them if you're trying. So that is everything I had for you guys today. Some questions we've been getting recently from customers in the store are, what are some extra things we can put out in order to feed the birds? So, you know, if you've got your sunflower seed feeder already, you've got your Niger feeder already. Here's a Niger. I showed you a sunflower seed feeder. Here's a Niger feeder that's a little bit different than most. It's all mesh, which is really neat. And the birds can just cling onto the mesh there and feed, or it has a little perch here. This is your Niger feeder. So say you've got your Niger feeder, you've got your sunflower seed mixed feeder, and you're looking for something else. Of course, there's suet, which is great for the birds in the wintertime when it's really cold out. We've got pepper suet, which will keep squirrels away. Squirrels can taste the hot pepper in this, but the birds can't. So that's one way to keep them from eating your suet. And if you're having issues with, because it's been so cold, it seems like the birds are having trouble pecking away at the suet, they can still do it. But when it does freeze, it can be a little bit harder for them to pick away at it. Some suets, they're not all created equal. So some of them are a little bit softer than others. So we do have some like this seed treat, which is a little bit softer, I've found. Anything with these pictures on it, like this of the birds, this brand tends to have softer kind of suet. You can feel it if you squeeze it a bit, and that can make it easier for the birds to feed when it's really, really cold. But either way, they'll still eat the suet. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But if you want to give them a little bit, something extra, you want to spoil them a bit, you can put out something that's just a little softer that can help them go through the suet a little bit faster if you're concerned during these cold months. But another feeder that you can put out are peanut feeders. So we recommend those a lot. Of course, you want to put them in a spot where squirrels can't get to them, because squirrels will absolutely love the peanuts. But lots of birds eat peanuts that might be surprising, because some of our small birds, like the chickadees, they love peanuts. The titmice, they love peanuts, nuthatches, and of course woodpeckers. This is a great feeder for all of them. And you'll see there's no perches on it, on this peanut feeder, because this is the birds that tend to like the peanuts a lot. Those are the clinger types of birds. So woodpeckers, the nuthatches, chickadees, titmice, they can all cling onto a feeder like this. So that's a little something different. So this is a peanut feeder. Again, it's like a mesh style there. You can also put sunflower seeds in these. If you have one and you're maybe not wanting to put peanuts out, you can put sunflower seeds in it too, or a mix of both. And the birds will cling onto that mesh and pick away at the little pieces. You can also do peanuts in the shell, and we just got in some new peanuts in the shell feeders, which are kind of cool. This is almost like a hopper style feeder, but it's got, again, mesh on it, but it's larger mesh for peanuts in the shell. So I like this one too, because it's got a nice big perch, so you can get blue jays on it super easily. They love peanuts in the shell. So they'll perch on here and they'll pull the peanuts out and be very stoked. There's lots of different types of peanut feeders, so you can get them that are peanuts, for peanuts in the shell or peanuts out of the shell. So that's something you can do. We're getting to the point where birds will start exhibiting nesting behavior, but it might be a little early to put out your nesting material. We have these nesting balls that are super popular. They're all natural cotton, and the birds will pull out the nesting material when it is nesting season. They will either build a nest out of this or use it to line their nest, depending on the species. So we do have a whole bunch of nesting balls. We just got them back in stock, but might be a little early to put them out. It couldn't hurt to put them out, but you probably won't see the birds going to it yet. These are perfectly fine for birds. You want to make sure not to use dryer lint, though, because it's not known if chemicals in the detergents, if they can harm birds at all. So you really don't want to put out dryer lint for nesting material because of that reason. You can use them for fire starters. You can use them for all kinds of different things, but not nesting material so much. So keep that in mind as well. So it looks like you guys have some comments here. We'll get to those. Bob, who has sent in those photos of the white-crowned sparrow amongst other things. He also has the bluebirds. Here's his white-crowned sparrow here. So Bob says, "Good morning. I'm definitely seeing an increase in the number of birds overall and a lot of singing, but the finches are just in crazy numbers, probably close to 50 goldfinches plus another 20 or so house finches. About 6 tree sparrows are also showing up, along with a handful of white-throated sparrows. Had a white-crowned sparrow for one day and a robin for one day. Merlinette picking up northern mockingbird, fox sparrow, and pine siskins, but I've not seen any of them." Oh, that's really cool. So Bob's having a huge diversity of birds here, and he's using that Merlin app. Sounds like the Sound ID to pick up some different bird calls. So he's got the mockingbird, which I can show you the picture of. Again, here's your mockingbird. So he's got the mockingbird. He's got fox sparrow, which are really cool. So fox sparrow are going to be large, almost like that white-crowned sparrow, how they're pretty large. Fox sparrows are also quite big, and they've got more of a chestnut type coloration to them. You tend to see them on the ground. Tend not to be really a feeder bird, but you might see them by some brush or under some trees and shrubs where they flick around the leaf litter, kind of like a northern flicker would, to find some food. So really cool that you've got a fox sparrow and pine siskins. Haven't had many reports of pine siskins in the area this year, so that's a really good one too. So you never know what you're going to find with that Merlin app. So again, that's an app called Merlin, Merlin, by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And it's kind of hard to see here in my picture, but there's different things you can do. You can do bird IDs. You can submit a photo for photo ID, and then one says sound ID, which is really fun to play with. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, it's a lot of fun. So let's see. Claudia is on. She says, good morning from Salzburg, PA. Good morning, Claudia. Thank you for tuning in. Let's see. Ed says, Bob, seeing lots of goldfinches here in your Mendon Ponds Park as well. Counted at least 45 at our feeders earlier this week. Holy cow. So lots of finch activity. So I'm wondering, with all of you people seeing finches, has anybody started to see them turning gold yet? I haven't seen any turning gold yet, but I'm not getting many of them at my feeders. So I'm curious if anyone's seeing those goldfinches start to turn gold. That's another sure sign that spring's on its way. Rich is on. He says, good morning. We had a pair of downy woodpeckers visit our suet feeders this week. Also had several chickadees, house finches, tufted titmice visiting our feeders, hoping to post some pics for Tuesday's stream. Awesome. Yes, you can always send in photos. We love to see what kind of birds you're seeing. We love sharing your photos. So one of the birds that Rich is getting are these house finches and tufted titmice. Yeah, we've been getting a lot of tufted titmouse activity here at the birdhouse behind the store. We've got some feeders set up, and this morning, boy, there was a tufted titmouse singing its little heart out. And actually, I'll play you the song of the tufted titmouse. It sounds like Peter, Peter, Peter. So that is the tufted titmouse. And so Rich has been getting those at their feeder. Another bird that you might hear calling right now, I'll play you the Carolina wren call, and that can sound kind of different depending on which call they're using, but this is Carolina wren. So more of a melodic kind of call than the some really cool sightings here. Let's see. Lynn is saying so many birds this week, tons of finches. So Lynn's also getting lots of finches, which is cool, along with titmice, chickadees, cardinals, mourning doves, 4 crows pecking around, and my favorite, a pileated woodpecker. So Lynn has a whole diversity of birds there. Lots of people reporting titmice. Haven't heard lots of reports of them recently, so that's really cool. Everyone's getting finches and titmice, which is interesting. Pat here says we had 5 Redwing Blackbirds under our feeders yesterday. So Pat is seeing Redwing Blackbirds. Again, not a bird that you commonly, I guess I should say, see at bird feeders. It's not uncommon to have one, but in the early spring is when you're most likely going to have them. They're tired from their migration. They're just coming back in. Food's a little scarce. There's not a lot of insects out to feed on. So that's when you're going to see them coming to feeders most often, is early spring is when we get most reports of Redwing Blackbirds. So really cool. Here's the male and female. The female looks strikingly different. She doesn't have as much coloration on her as the male, but another really beautiful bird here. So that's the Redwing Blackbird. Richard is on. He says, today I saw some Eastern Bluebirds this morning here in upstate New York making their wonderful singing notes. They're amazing birds since they are the state bird of New York. Yes, that is a fun fact there. Thank you, Richard. The Eastern Bluebird is our state bird. So they are out and about. Here's some great photos sent in by Bob of the Bluebird. The males are going to be more of a brighter blue. So this is your male Bluebird here. And then the females are more of kind of like a soft powdery blue. So here there's a male Bluebird on the left, and then the female is on the right there. So really beautiful birds. And it sounds like Richard has been hearing some of those calling as well. So that is our state bird right there, the Bluebird. And if you've never seen a bluebird before, that's not totally uncommon. Bluebirds like open areas. They like open fields. They like wildflower meadows. So we hope to do some bird walks coming up this spring, and we'll make sure to do some that you can see bluebirds at. So a lot of people haven't seen a bluebird before, so we want to make that happen for people. Karen says, good morning. Had cardinals, Carolina wrens, and blue jays singing this morning. So Karen's also hearing a bunch of birds calling. Also had a red-bellied woodpecker at the Suet paddle feeder. So Karen has been getting a good mix of birds singing and at her feeders, and it sounds like she's got the paddle feeder too. So this is what Karen's seeing in her yard right now, the red-bellied woodpecker at the Suet paddle feeder. So very cool. Lots of birds singing out there. Lynn says, so many birds this week. Oh, yeah, we had Lynn's post. Oh, I clicked on the thing again. Okay, here we go. So Margaret says, watching a whole bunch of goldfinches at my feeder right now. So Margaret's also getting a whole bunch of finches. She says, one is eating snow on the weather guard dome. So Margaret has lots of finches at her feeders, and then also going after some snow, which we have plenty of. Bob says goldfinches are definitely brightening up. Not all, but some. I have one with a really yellow wing, which looks funny. So, all right, they're starting to molt those feathers and get some of their bright gold feathers in, it sounds like. So hopefully we'll see more of that over the next couple weeks. Sally says, I've had titmice all winter. I'm always amazed these little birds choose the largest nuts. Yes, they do. Both the titmice, the chickadees, they love the peanuts, and they always go for the biggest one. You might sometimes see, especially if you do have one of those tray feeders where the food's kind of spread out, you might see the birds pick up one peanut or seed, then pick up another one. They weigh them. So they weigh each one to see which one's the heaviest, and that's the one that they go for. So it's pretty interesting stuff that these birds do. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions. There is still time to join our caption contest. So that is on our Facebook page. You can see the photo here of the snowy owl, come up with a best caption for it, go on and see what other people have chosen for their captions, and make sure to like your favorites. So we've got that going on. That'll run through the end of the day today. And the winner, who is the person that has the most likes and comments on their caption, will get a $25 gift certificate to the Birdhouse. So it doesn't cost anything to enter, and you might get yourself a $25 gift certificate to the store. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions. We'll be back on, we'll be back next Saturday with another broadcast. We won't be live on Tuesday, unfortunately, because I'm going to a trade show, but we'll be back on Saturday with a live broadcast where we'll share your photos and answer your questions. And keep in mind, too, that Teddy the Snowy Owl from Wild Wings will be at the store next Saturday as well, and he'll be here from 11 to 1. So we will announce that more as we get closer. So everybody have a good weekend, and we will see you next